Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first Leadership Journey session of this year, and also the very first one of our Global Leadership Lab immersion from Atlas Corps, starting this month in January with the theme of Developing Others. My name is Patrícia. I'm an Atlas Corps Fellow from Brazil, currently serving at Girl Up, and I'll be your host for today's session. Before we introduce here our amazing guest for today, I would like to remind you all that the Atlas Corps team will be monitoring the chat on the platforms that we're currently streaming. So whether you're joining us from Hopin, YouTube, or Facebook, make sure to add your questions to the speaker on the chat and also add in your name and your country so we can acknowledge you later on the second half of today's event. And also a big surprise, we'll be doing a raffle prize among the people who send questions on the chat. We'll be giving out 5 copies of the book. So please make sure to add questions to our speakers today, and we'll get back to them soon. To warm us a little bit, I have an icebreaker question for all of you. Since the theme of this leadership immersion is developing others, what does developing others mean to you? While you add your question, your answer on the chat for us, let me introduce our amazing guest for today. Roshan Paul. Roshan Paul has spent his life questioning the status quo and building a career around connecting global citizens to solve social problems across boundaries. With these values in mind, he co-founded Amani Institute in 2010 and co-leading the organization from a simple idea to an award-winning social enterprise that is now present in Kenya, Brazil, and India, besides projects in over 25 other countries around the world. Amani Institute has to date helped nearly 10,000 people from 65 countries to step into or accelerate their careers in social impact. And it had also supported more than 250 organizations from large global UN departments to small local businesses and everything in between, increasing staff capacity, motivation, and impact. Roshan has stepped down as a CEO in 2021, but he's still an active board member. And the seeds of Amani Institute were actually cultivated while Roshan was working in Ashoka for a decade, designing and launching 5 new programs and managing 2 other global projects supporting over 500 social entrepreneurs, also known as Ashoka Fellows around the world. And as an Amani alum myself, it is a great pleasure to welcome Roshan Paul. Welcome, Roshan. How are you doing today? And thank you for joining us.
I'm doing well. Thank you, Patricia. Thanks for having me. Great to see you in the Amani world and now in the Atlas Corps world as well. And I'm excited to be here with Atlas Corps.
It's amazing. I also find it very interesting to find the people that are colliding these 2 words from actually oftentimes. So it's really interesting to know about this. So before we jump to the questions, I would like to circle back to the warm-up question. I see that some people are already added to the chat, but I would love to know from you, Roshan, what does it mean developing others to you?
For me, I think developing others, I would say it's helping people to grow in the direction of their dreams.
That's a great way to say. I think that you sum up everything in such a beautiful sentence. And I see that Maria, for example, said that developing others for her is helping them achieve higher efficiency in their activity. Mm-hmm. And yes, I think that it's also adds a lot to what you said so far. Mm-hmm. So let's go to our first question then. I know that all over your career, you've been working in the field of social change for nearly 2 decades now. I know that there are probably specific moments or lessons that you've learned so far in your journey, but from a generic point of view, what does the term social change mean to you? And also the role of social entrepreneur, what does it entail?
Cool. I think for me, social change means solving problems in society, addressing the needs that we see around us day to day. So it's quite straightforward in that sense. Of course, how you do it is not straightforward, and there's 1,000 different ways for each problem that we face. But more broadly speaking, that's what I would say social change means. And coming to the social entrepreneur, I think a social entrepreneur is one type of change maker. It's one type of role as the initiator or the creator of a solution, the person who puts the first building blocks of a new reality in place, right? Who can see that new reality and starts to build it slowly, step by step. And then many others come together to help that social entrepreneur to make it grow, to make it scale, to have an impact, to make it, move into policy, and bring lots of other stakeholders to the table as well. So I think that there's a role for everybody, but maybe the social entrepreneur is the one who puts the first steps in place.
I love that you mentioned this creation of new realities, and I think it also it's very close to the second question that I have for you. That
Okay.
at co-founding Amani Institute, this global nonprofit organization with this mission of developing people, right, and organizations as well to lead the social impact that wants to make a difference. What is the importance, or can you share a little bit for you? What is the importance of helping others to find their mission and to lead this impactful career?
Yeah, I think it's the core of happiness. I think that we find meaning and fulfillment when we work on something greater than ourselves, right? There's lots and lots of research to show that, and across multiple fields, whether it's in religion, whether it's in psychology, whether it's in the way that human beings have organized over millennia. We've seen that human beings do best when they are working for something that's more important than just their own self or their own immediate life, right? So when I started my career, I left a potentially really high-paying job to go into social impact. People thought I was crazy. Like, this was the early 2000s. It was a recession. People weren't, they're trying to get whatever job they could, and I was graduating from college and going to work in social entrepreneurship, and people really thought I was nuts. And then 10 years later, those same people realized that they wanted that too, that they were, not finding fulfillment in what they were doing, and they wanted to move into this work as well. And um, to me, that made a lot of sense, because over the 10 years that I had been doing that work, I started to see how fulfilling it was for me, how much I was learning, how much I was growing. And so it made sense that people wanted to move into that too. So whether it's positive psychology today that is uncovering the human tendency to look for meaning, the human desire to build meaning into one's life, or whether it's, every religion, for thousands of years has been saying that the path to a fulfilling life is to serve other people, is to help other people. I think modern science and ancient religion are coming together. And so I want people to realize that. I want people to realize that this is the road to fulfillment and happiness. And as a bonus, we'll solve our social problems along the way.
Yes, and I think that now I would love to talk about your book, because you wrote a book, a new book, and it's called New Reason for Work. And I think that you probably touched about these points that you just mentioned, but
Mhm.
I know that you also talked about 6 essential keys to unlock a person's dream career in social impact. Would you mind sharing with the audience a sneak peek of these essential keys, or at least the ones that you think are most significant, if there is one that is more significant for you?
Sure. I'm happy to go through all of them really quickly. So, in the book, we lay out 6 keys to building a meaningful career. And, we start with the key number one, which is designing your own education. And this is really based on the idea that our education does not end when we come out of college. It's in fact the beginning of it, and we need to keep learning throughout our lives. And so, what are the ways in which we can structure that learning in order to help us move forward in our career? So that's what that chapter is about: is how to find non-academic ways to continue your learning. And along the way, we address questions of whether you should do a master's or not, or whether you should do an internship or not, and things like that. But it's really about a lifelong quest to keep learning. The second key is, we say, it's aligning who you are with what you do. And that's really about, that process of finding work that fits your purpose, fits your values, helps you to question your own beliefs and the beliefs of others, helps you to find the courage that you need if you want to get into social impact work, because it's not easy and it's going to take a long time. And so it's really about alignment of who you are as a person and the work that you want to do. The third key is, say, we say, becoming a social innovator. And what that's about is that we say that the number one core skill that you need to be successful in your career is creativity and problem solving. Because at the end of the day, we're trying to solve problems in society, so we need to be good at that. But even on a more day-to-day level, in our work, in our organizations, as things go wrong, as problems come up, we need to be good at finding solutions. And that's what every boss, every employer values more than anything else, is someone who can come up with solutions to problems rather than just critique and point out the problems, which is what our education teaches us to do. So through that, we have a structured kind of process of ways in which you can build your innovation skills and your innovation abilities so that you can be a good problem solver. The fourth is what we say, weaving a network of relationships. And that's because no social change happens alone. You need to build a team, you need to build allies. For most of us, networking is a little bit of a kind of like anxiety inducing process. Many people think it's a loaded word with a sense of inauthenticity and so on. And what we're trying to do is demystify networking so that it can be something that anyone can do, and to build your global network of people who can, become allies for you in whatever cause you wish to pursue. The fifth one is owning your story. And this is because we believe that if you're going to make change in the long term, you need to really understand what your story is. Why are you doing what you're doing? And how do you tell other people and explain that to other people in a compelling way that makes them want to join you, makes them want to follow you, but also at the same time helps you understand the choices that you've made in your life. And then the last key is realizing it's a marathon. And this is really about the long term process of taking care of yourself, because social change work is not easy. It's going to take a long time. And so you need to pace yourself, right? It's not something that you sprint really hard for a while and then you burn out. No, you've got to take care of yourself for the long haul. And based on some research work that my co-author did in her master's, we lay out a framework for how you can take care of yourself and take care of the people around you while building a long-term career and social impact. So those are the 6 steps in the book, and of course each step is structured as a chapter, and in each chapter we have different frameworks. We have lots of stories and examples of people from all around the world who have been applying these steps into their daily practice and their daily change making.
That's really amazing. And for those of you who want more, dig more about these 6 essential keys, the book is available, right, Roshan? And also there will be
Absolutely.
5 lucky winners here that will get this book and will be able to read a little bit more about this. But I would love to dig into one of the specific keys
Okay.
that you mentioned, uh, which is about the work-life balance that you mentioned on the second key.
Hmm.
And in this pandemic world right now, where we're currently facing a lot of people currently working from home, but also facing no boundaries in between professional
Hmm.
life and personal life as well. And I think that we are talking about a generation of burnout in the
Hmm.
burnout society, quoting the book here as well. Um, can you tell us a little bit more about what led you to this conclusion that we shouldn't be separating the life that we want to do with the life that we do currently, and how can this apply to our lives in a practical way?
Yeah, happy to, because this is something that I feel very strongly about. When I started working in social impact, one of the things that I noticed from the beginning, I was working with social entrepreneurs from around the world, and it seemed that it didn't matter whether that person was from the US or from India or from South Africa or Brazil. They didn't understand the concept of work-life balance. Like it didn't make sense to them as an idea, and I started to realize that it didn't make sense to me either, because we're brought up to see these things very separately. Like there's something called work and there's something called life, and they're two different things. It's almost like they have to be kept in balance. That's the language we use around it, but it kind of doesn't make sense, because if you if you think about it, we spend the majority of our adult lives working, right? So why are we seeing that as something separate from the rest of our life? There's a great quote that I like from a writer called Annie Dillard, where she says, "How we spend our days is how we spend our lives." Right? How we spend our days is how we spend our lives. So if we're going to spend most of our days working, that's how we're spending most of our life. So why are we separating work from life, right? In this idea of work-life balance. So can you make work as meaningful and as fulfilling as your non-work life, right? And so when you start to think about it that way, it's actually quite liberating, right? So then if you want to go see an event in the middle of the workday, maybe you want to go to your child's soccer match, or you want to go on a 2 hour hike in the middle of the day, go for it, right? And then if you'd rather work on a Friday night instead of watching Netflix or going out for beers, then do that, right? When you stop thinking about this artificial separation, it opens up a lot more different possibilities, right? So, for instance, my wife and I are probably going to go work from the beach in a couple of weeks during the pandemic, because why not, right? Like we can make that happen because we don't see our work and our life as two separate things that we have to then take a vacation and then go to the beach, and things like that. So bigger picture, I think this idea is the idea of work-life balance is appealing for people who don't find meaning and purpose at work, right? So when you don't find meaning and purpose from your work, you want to protect your non-work time very carefully, right? Because you find meaning in your non-work time. But if you can find meaning and purpose at work, then you find all of your life meaningful, and then it stops becoming so important to protect your non-work time as well, and you can go back and forth based on whatever it is that's most important at that time. I also just want to clarify that I'm not saying that you should work all the time at all. I mean, I fully agree that you need to take your opportunities to rest, to renew, to recharge, all of that. But build that in as part of a fully integrated, holistically meaningful life, and not like a separation. Because again, that's not alignment; that's fragmentation and separation. And I think that there's a way that we can align everything together. And that's what I've seen borne out in the lives of most of the social entrepreneurs that I've worked with as well. It's the sense of alignment rather than separation.
It's really great to hear about this. And also, I think that once you have this perspective that it's aligned, it is not fragmented, this mindset, it is also is about the people that surround you, right? I mean, the network that is supporting you in some ways, and you're also helping to support it. And in another part of your book, you acknowledge that any impact work is collective. And
Mhm.
here at Atlas Corps and also at Amani Institute, we talk a lot about creating and nourishing networks.
Mhm.
So, what are some of the tips that you can share with the audience about weaving a meaningful network of like minded people, like minded professionals as well? And how does one person even start building this network?
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's important to realize that we already have a network, right? We have our family, we have our friends, we have our classmates from all our different, from school and university and our masters. So we already have networks. The question is, how do we cultivate those networks or weave them together in a meaningful way? And I think for a lot of people, the idea of networking, as I mentioned earlier, strikes a bit of fear or a bit of anxiety because it seems kind of inauthentic. It seems like you've got to, like, it's all about getting something. It's very transactional. It's like, I'm going to ask somebody for something, I'm going to network with somebody so they can provide something to me. And what we say is that's not the right way to think about it. Actually, the best way to think about networking is to flip that, like reverse it, and saying, instead of what can you do for me, it's what can I do for you, right? How can I help you? And I think if you enter your relationships, professional relationships in particular, with that sense of like, how can I help you? Then you're much more likely to be able to build a meaningful network of people who will also help you when you need help as well. So what we're trying to do is demystify networking from this like fake and inauthentic kind of thing that many people think it is, to something that's very real, very authentic, and it's not about going to a cocktail party and handing out your business card. It's about having one-on-one coffees with people. So one of our principles in the book is like, it's coffees, not cocktails, right? That you can build a meaningful network step by step with different people. So very much something that introverts can do as well. I mean, if you're an extrovert, you love going to cocktails and talking to 20 different people in one evening, that's great for you, like do it. But those are necessarily not going to be deep relationships. So can you also build deeper relationships through one-on-one coffees and so on, which is something that maybe more introverts would align themselves better to. And like that, we've got a couple of other, principles around networking, around making sure that you're going to, the people on the outskirts of your network, and not just the people close to you all the time, because that's where actually the more interesting ideas and the more interesting opportunities will come from. And a few other principles as well that we go over in the book. But the idea is that networking is something we can all do. Building a meaningful, set of relationships is something we can all do, and that's what we want to help people see.
Amazing. And I think that knowing a lot of these, putting into practice, you probably experience a lot of things, different things in your journey, and you also heard a lot of different experiences from other people.
Mhm.
Is there a specific anecdote or story or even journey that, I'm sorry, learning that you had in the past that you would like to share with the audience?
I mean, there's so many, but let me pick one. I think those who know me well, like, know that like my story in social impact started on September 11th, when I was in university, and I came out of my class one day and watched the planes hit the Twin Towers, and at the time I was a 22-year-old college student in America. I was looking at jobs in consulting, investment banking, and so on. And when 9/11 happened, and it was followed by a lot of violence in my home country in India, it was also, in the US as well, there were lots of racial attacks on people with brown skin, and things like that. And all of that made me feel like, okay, the countries I know best, India and the US, seem to be on fire. And like, what good would I do going to work in investment banks or consulting firms? Um, and then the day of 9/11, something else really important happened. On the evening, the president of my college, the university, and he was an older white guy who was used to work in an oil company, and he was now the president of the university from Texas. Like, you wouldn't have expected too much from him, but he gathered the whole campus and he said, you know, in the days to come, we may find out who did this, and we may find out that they come from a particular race or religion or ethnic group. And we may have students on this campus from that group. And I just want to say that if any of those students are targeted because of 9/11, then the university will do everything it can to protect those students. And I thought that was a real mark of leadership from someone I wasn't necessarily expecting it from. In today, you think about the way minorities are treated today all around the world, it's definitely, something I think that we can still gain inspiration from for today. And so that's really stayed with me as an important moment of somebody taking, unexpected leadership. And then as I was interviewing for jobs as well, I was potentially going to go work with a very prestigious consulting firm. And I then decided that, I wanted to do something else. And this company was not used to people turning them down. And so they invited me to go speak to one of the senior partners at the company, and I thought they would make a strong case for me to stay there, to work with them. But what the guy said was, again, he said, if you really want to go work in social impact, go for it. He told me how he had went to work as a musician and was in a band for his 20s, and then only came into consulting later on in his life, and he felt that the lessons he learned traveling in a band in his 20s are lessons that like kept him in good stead throughout his life and throughout his career. So he said, go for it. And if you still want to work here, we'll still be here. And again, that was, again, unexpected advice confirming that I was on the right track with how I was thinking. about it. And then, again, I was 22, and one of my mentors, he was in his 40s. He said that, you're asking questions and you're making choices now that most of us only learn when we're getting close to retirement. So again, it was like people confirming that I was on the right track, even though what I was doing was possibly really going against, what society expects and conditions you to do. So those were some lessons or a part of my journey from very early in my career that I think, set me on this path.
These are really incredible stories and really powerful. And I think that following up on what you just said about these incentives, basically that you got, that you're on the right path.
Hmm.
There's a question from our audience, actually
Okay.
from Gael from Madagascar, and she's asking, how impactful have the strategies you lay out in the book been so far? Do you have any before and after stories of the other young people who had applied these lessons and who then changed specific areas of their lives?
Yeah. Hi, Gail. Love Madagascar, one of the most beautiful countries in the world. I Yes, the strategies, we write about them because they have been impactful, right? We've been working on this for more than 10 years with Amani Institute, and so the book was written as a way to distill the principles that we know really work and to share that with the world as much as possible, right? So they absolutely work. And if you read the book, you'll also see a lot of these stories of people who have been applying these strategies to their lives, to their work, and so on. So there's lots of examples of that and lots of stories in the book. Yeah.
Thank you. And there's also another question here from Pearl this time, from Uganda. Do you think it's time to begin innovating around bringing the ecosystem full circle? And how can we make social enterprises the norm?
Yeah. Thank you, Paul. I think that it's absolutely time. I think it's actually happening. um, if you are interested in making social enterprises the norm, I think that process is starting to happen globally because of millennials and Gen Z that is really pushing companies to be more responsive, to be better corporate citizens. I mean, when I started my career, and I'm very old now, but when I started my career 20 something years ago, the corporate world and the social impact world or nonprofits, they did not communicate well. They completely distrusted each other, distrusted motivations of the other party. And today, you're seeing a lot more coming together, a lot more partnerships, a lot more alignment. And you're also seeing companies being pushed to, improve their supply chain, the sustainability, to answer questions about human rights along the way, to increase their diversity and equity and inclusion. So I think that social enterprises are showing the way for bigger companies for how to do this. How do you bring purpose and sustainability into your DNA of the company itself? Of course, it's going to be a long path, and it's not going to be straightforward, and there's going to be lots of false starts along the way, but I think that journey is already started in many ways. And I think, like, if you're a founder of a company and you're probably under the age of 35 today, and people to come from the next generations, you're going to start your company from the beginning with questions, with sustainability and diversity and all of that, much more baked into how the company is set up than companies that are much older, which are also in a process of change, but it's going to take longer for them.
These are great questions. And I think that talking from my own experience, I've been in the past in social enterprises that were actually not social enterprises, but they focused their vision and their mission as well to really set into this idea that they want to achieve impact and how they're doing it, to taking a look from within. And I think that balancing, following along from this question, there is another question here from Asma that touches upon again on the work-life balance.
Mhm.
And Asma from Tunisia is asking, how do you enjoy your work, especially during the COVID pandemic? Working 8 work hours per day and being on the screen the whole day, especially now that we're constantly online as well.
Yeah. Um, Well, I can answer for myself, but I think, the bigger question, the bigger answer, I think, is that everyone's lives are different, right? Everyone's home lives are different. Everyone's got different priorities at home, responsibilities with family, with your partner, with your kids, with your parents, maybe. And so everyone's going to have to answer this question separately for themselves. But I think the way to think about it is to, again, try to see it as integration and not as balance, right? So, what that means is if you need to spend 8 hours a day working, then why not think about not from 9 to 5, but like the whole day, right? So, for instance, I got started this morning, and I knew that I had this session happening, so I actually started working before this. But now after this session, I'm going to take a couple of hours and maybe go for a run because it's winter, but like in the middle of the day, it's a little warmer. So I'm going to go do my exercise now and, then have lunch and so on, and then come back to work in the afternoon. But I already started working, earlier in the morning. So that's just my story, my case. But I think the larger thing is to see it as not like 8 hours, but see it as a longer time frame, and you can take breaks. You can, take care of your other responsibilities in the middle of the day. Of course, you have your meetings and you've got to arrange things around that. But again, I would say my larger principle is try to see how you can integrate everything as opposed to separate things, and make sure you're getting your breaks, make sure you're getting exercise, and all of the other things that are important to you.
Well, that's a great insight, and I think that I'm probably gonna start practicing it into more instead of thinking it's work hour 8 hours to work a day, the full day and also the full journey of my life, I guess.
Mhm.
And Irina from Armenia has another question here. How do you think people with less access for technology can build their networks during these COVID times?
Um, so that's an interesting question because you're saying, if I'm understanding right, you're saying people don't have as much access to technology, so they can't connect virtually, and because of COVID, they can't meet people as well. Um, I I think it's a time for creativity. I would say so. Maybe you can write letters, handwritten letters. Maybe you can use whatever technology you have to try to go for a walk with someone rather than meeting them inside. I think especially here, think about networking as a one-on-one activity as opposed to try to meet lots of different people at one time. So whatever ways in which you can gather with people, safely, one on one, perhaps, try and do that. And it may also be a chance not to build new networks, but to deepen your existing networks, right? So the relationships you already have that are important to you, to invest more time in them, to deepen them, and make them strong as well. And then hopefully once COVID reduces or access to technology comes up, then you'll have more opportunities there as well.
Well, just touching upon the networking thing, it came to my mind many different things, but also thinking about networking on the online field and also on the offline field. I think that these are different things. And of course, right now we currently have, for example, LinkedIn and other social media that can help us, right, to
Yeah.
connect with different people. But we have another question about networking. So, what are the tips that you have that could help potentially introverts or people that are more introverts to nail meaningful networking without being drained or without feeling the need of faking it, especially with this, I would say now this, the screen that we have that
Yeah.
sometimes it's a barrier, but that we have to fake it to feel like, oh yes, it's fine. I'm not an
Yeah.
introvert. I'm comfortable with this.
Yeah. I'm an introvert, very much so. I think that uh, introverts typically, they don't mind meeting people and having long conversations and deep conversations. What they don't like is having many different conversations with many different people at the same time that are quite superficial, right? So I think for what I would say to introverts is really that principle that I said about coffees, not cocktails. So try to build your relationships one by one. and make them meaningful, right? So rather than meeting 10 people at a conference where you have a 2-minute conversation with each of them, see if you can have a 1 hour conversation with one person once a week, right? And build your network that way. And there's no finish line here, right? There's no goal. Like it's something for the rest of your life that you should do, and that you should enjoy doing, is getting to know different people and building your network of people that way, and even like building a set of relationships across all different kinds of people with from all different kinds of backgrounds and um, parts of society and so on, and just getting to know different people in a deeper way, I think is something that works well for introverts. Typically, it's one-on-one as opposed to one-on-10 or something. And then even then, and especially then, you don't have to fake it, right? Because you're just getting to know someone on a one-on-one basis. You can completely be yourself, and you don't have to feel like you're faking it in front of a crowd or anything like that.
Yeah, this is a really great input that you added here. And I'm also an introvert, so I do feel that sometimes it's easier to go step by step to go
Hmm.
closer to one or another person, and also to build trust in the relationship, right? I
Hmm.
mean, not only going with the thought of what am I offering to you, but also what I want to get from you, but at the same time, like how can we grow together from here, right?
Yes,
This is
absolutely.
something that I feel is very powerful.
Yeah, let's grow
And
together is a very nice way to think about it.
yeah, and there's one last question that from the audience here, from Pearl again from Uganda. Will you be offering supporting services to complement the book, and like master classes, Toastmasters, like communities, coaching, or all type of venues to facilitate continuous interact or support?
Thank you, Pearl. I really appreciate the question. Yes, we are offering certain supporting services, like we're doing a lot of these kinds of talks. We may be doing some master classes in or courses in the coming months. So, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'll be posting about it there. So you can find out about it there, or you can follow our website, thenewreasontowork.com, and we'll announce things there as well. So yeah, I think there's going to be different things, but feel free to reach out to me individually as well. If there's some way that I can help you or your organization, I'd be very happy to do that.
Thank you, Roshan. We actually don't have more time to answer other questions from the audience, but I have a final question for you. Do you have a final piece of advice to the audience from these rising social change leaders that are watching us right now?
Yeah, I know the Atlas Corps community pretty well because I was involved with Atlas Corps from the very beginning. Actually, I was uh, in the meeting in New Delhi, I think in 2004 or something, when we came up with the name Atlas Corps. And so I've been part of the Atlas Corps world ever since the beginning, and good friends with the founder Scott, and I know like the people who've gone through it, also because we've had many Amani Institute and Atlas Corps crossover fellows as well, like you, Patricia. What I'm about to say is coming from, I think, a good understanding of where you are. Um, and I would say my one like piece of advice is to see it as a marathon, right? To see your life as an integrated whole journey towards social impact. That is very important to get started. To get started now, to do whatever you can to make the next step forward, but knowing that it will take a lot of time to make a change, that knowing that it's a lifetime of a career to do this, and at some point also knowing at some point that you will have to hand off your work to others, the way that I transitioned out of Amani Institute and we have a new CEO, the way that Scott transitioned out of Atlas Corps and handed over to Bijan, a new CEO. You will be handing over your work to others, and you will be going into new areas. See that as liberating, right? Like you don't have to do it all. You don't have to accomplish it all. You can do your part, and you can hand it to someone else to run the next step of the race forward. And that it's going to take time, and play your role in it, and find that I find that to be at least a liberating, sense that I don't have to take responsibility for the whole, but for everything, whatever my part can be of that.
This is really great, and thank you for these words. I think that it also liberates me and
Hmm.
probably a lot of people that are watching as well. And I think that it's a lot about intention, as you mentioned, as knowing that whatever you do is going to create some impact, right? But that you
Yes,
don't have to be there all the time to sacrifice, let's put the word here, for
absolutely.
this.
Yep.
Oh, thank you very much, Roshan, for joining us today.
I'm very happy to do it. Very happy to see you again, and very happy to be with the Atlas Corps community.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you everyone for joining us today for, again, the first leadership journey session of this year of this Atlas Corp Global Leadership Lab on the theme Developing Others. My name is Patrícia Imada. Again, I'm the host for today, and our guest was Roshan Paul, the co-founder of Amani Institute, and also board member of Amani Institute. And join us tomorrow again at the same time for another leadership journey session, this time with my colleague Asma Rabia, who will be hosting for Dr. Rohini Anand, the author of Leading Global Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, a guide for systemic change in multinational organizations. And finally, I have the name of the winners here for the book. Congratulations, Gael, Pearl, Brighton, Cheyenne, and Asma. We'll be in touch with you. Make sure to follow us on Facebook and YouTube for more engaging content like this one. And also, if you haven't yet, check our website to learn more about the ongoing recruitment for Atlas Corps at atlascorp.org/programs. And thank you. Have a great day.